Hello, my name's Harold, and today we're gonna work on a mystery project. I'm not gonna tell you what it is until we get down to the last bit, and you may recognize it by then. I don't know, but I'm gonna keep it a secret until right up at the end. And this may be a little bit of a long video. It's going to be in more than one part because there's a lot of work involved here, and it takes a lot of time. And I cut hours of the video out anyway, so that it doesn't take very long. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the mystery tool. And I was thinking about the very first startup plant that I was in. I say startup plant because it was a little startup slave labor camp down by the bay, and they were reprocessing plastic. They would get plastic beads in tank cars and had a blower vacuum kind of thing that would suck them in, and you'd bag them up, and we'd get polypropylene and polyethylene, and we would mix stuff in it like titanium dioxide and so on. And we had these big old Banbury mixtures that Goodyear wore out, and they bought them from Goodyear. They had it one time when they worked for Goodyear. They had automatic scales, and they just blow the plastic in and weigh it and dump in the right amount and stuff. But we didn't get any of that stuff. All we had was the big old mixer, and these things stood about 2 floors tall. Yeah, what they had was they had big old rollers in them, like like rolling pins, except they were odd shaped. And what stuck out on one went into the cavity on the next one, and had a big V-shaped ram that came down and squeezed down in it. And the bottom of it was a V-shaped thing that would slide back and forth to let the plastic fall out of the bottom. And you'd weigh all that plastic up in bags on the balance scale, and then you'd pour it over inside that mixture, and then you'd pour over in the bags of whatever it was you was mixing up. You'd stomp all the spare bags flat on the side in your spare time, which was sort of an inside joke. But anyway, you'd squeeze that plastic and it would be mixing in there, and there was a lot of racket and vibration and all, and by friction it would melt the plastic and also mix all the chemicals in it. And it would, when the guy down, when you get it ready, you'd punch a buzzer, and the guy downstairs would get ready for you to dump it, or if he was ready for it and you hadn't dumped it yet, he would push the buzzer, and you'd open the bottom of that mixer. The big old blob of molten plastic would fall down on a conveyor belt and roll over on these two great big old rollers that were steam heated, and the plastic would stick in a layer to the hottest one. And it was a heck of a mess. But anyway, I was lucky enough to at one point get assigned up there on running that Banbury mixer, where I could load stuff off the elevator as fast as I could go and pour it in there as fast as I could. And that was 300 pounds of it about every few minutes, and it was, to say manual labor, there is where they invented manual labor. I was an old hand there the time I was there for 6 months. A lot of people didn't stay all week, But anyway, being such a modern and up-to-date plant, the guy upstairs at the Banbury mixer had a 2-inch plastic pipe that ran down to the guy down on the roll mill down on the bottom floor, and he could push the buzzer and put his ear up there, hey, talk to you. If whoever pushed the buzzer, the other guy would listen on the pipe, see what he had to say. And it's a really great communication system, but it actually worked. So one day I was having as much as 2 or 3 minutes of spare time there in between mixing up this stuff, and I had an idea come along that I thought seemed kind of funny. So I grabbed up the water hose and I got it going, and I pushed that buzzer and I crammed the hose in that pipe. And the guy downstairs stuck his ear up to the pipe, and there was dirt and, and dust and water and everything come out of there, and about half drowned him. He didn't think it was funny as I did, but the time he got upstairs, he was cooled down a little bit, And sorry about that. Anyway, let's go on and work on the mystery project. You may figure it out, but you won't figure it out in this video, I don't think.
Who knows?
Well, every day I get a little bit closer to getting back to the little engine that might could. And today I'm going to take that big old chunk of aluminum and I'm going to cut out a 3 cubic inch piece out of it. This is not it, this is the piece that has the shrinkage. And I'm going to be sure to use the vacuum to remove the chips, because that came out so smooth right there where I used the vacuum, and so rough here where I didn't, you know. But we're going to, since I haven't got my new glasses yet, I've got them ordered though, and I'll be back to the little engine within a week, I'm sure. So in the meantime, instead of wasting all my time, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the secret project, which means I've got to sit here and watch while this thing cuts off a big chunk of aluminum, because I don't want to burn up another motor. The belt that I was obsessing over finally arrived in a plain brown wrapper by U.S. mail, and there it is right there. I laid a square across it. It's very close to being straight, you know, between the pulleys, and I've put it down to the middle speed instead of the fastest one, because I was in the fastest speed when I burned the thing up, and that might have had something to do with it. There's no guarantee that that 1 horse Harbor Freight motor really can handle that kind of a load, you know. So without any more chat, we're going to get started here, and that mark is right about 3 1/4 inches, and I started actually maybe just a little ahead of it there, probably a 16th or 32nd. So this time maybe when I come back, it'll just have magically been cut off and there won't be any burned up machinery. But I'm going to sit here and keep an eye on things just in case. Here's a fortunate thing. I bought this for the RO weed trimmer, and this thing came with a little tool to cut off the string. Isn't that neat? I just happened to notice that. I didn't even pay any attention when I picked it up off the shelf. I think that's pretty convenient, and it didn't cost all that much. You ever look at something for a little bit and you get thinking, well, maybe something's just not right? And I did that a few minutes ago when I was watching the thing to see if the belt was straight. I discovered I had this pulley with a big side out, and this pulley with a little side out. And if you look back at the picture, that's exactly the opposite of the picture. And I guess it wouldn't have mattered if they had been exactly the same size pulleys, but they're not. So I turned it around, and now we're back to a normal speed. Funny how you overlook some little thing like that. That right there is your classic pickle sandwich. If you hadn't had one today, you need to go get one. It's taken me all afternoon to get down to that spot right there. I kept watching the motor temperature, and every time it got up above 140, in the neighborhood of 60 degrees centigrade, I shut it off and went and did something else. I went in, put the clothes in the washing machine, and come back out and ran it. Went in, put the clothes in the dryer, come back out and ran the saw a while. Went in, folded the clothes, come back out, started the saw until it got warm. And while I was sitting here, of course, I didn't waste all my time. I noticed that the ends of this thing had kind of got all dinged up in shipment there, and so had the capacitor cover, and I happened to have the old ones still laying here, and they were nice and shiny and not bent, so one of the times while it was cooling off, I traded that out. And then I was sitting here during the sawing process, and I watched an A-bomb video, and I watched a Chris B257 video, and read my mail on 2 or 3 different servers, and the darn thing's still not cut off, but surely it will be in a little bit. I did a little internet search for the running temperature of electric motors now, and it looks like that the lowest class motors could run up in the 65-degree centigrade range, which is, you know, above 140, around 150 something, I guess, Fahrenheit. So probably if I let this keep on cutting, it could have got up there. It might have just stopped getting warmer at that point. I don't know. But anyway, I stopped it before it got that far along. And of course I came across a reference to Jack Benny. He was on the radio for decades, and I think he was on TV for a short time too, back in the black and white days. And I think the standard joke on his channel was how cheap he was on his show, whatever. And for instance, he drove an old Maxwell automobile, and he had a vault in his basement, you know, where he'd go down and count his money. And so in one episode there, this holdup guy comes up behind Jack Benny and sticks a gun in his rib and says, "Your money or your life?" Jack Benny's standing there looking off in the distance for a while. Finally, this holdup guy says, "Didn't you hear me? I said your money or your life." Jack Benny says, I heard you. He says, "I'm thinking it over." So he's a good, thrifty guy after my own heart, though, you know. I bet at any time this thing's likely to pop loose from there, because the blade's getting really near the bottom surface. I don't see any holes in it, so that must be good stuff. Sort of like a watermelon, the good part's in the middle. Well, I cut this out of the middle, so I should get the best part of the aluminum. Well, do a good job tightening that down. And I've got enough aluminum sawdust there probably to melt down, make a standard size Coca-Cola can. Alright, next step's the mill. Alright, I'm going to try to take this thing and see if I can't square it off some. Obviously I don't have to get a smooth cut with that cutter, so I'll finish the thing off with a fly cutter once I've got it squared up. Okay, we're going handheld here a little bit. This is another day, and I've noticed when I feed the thing this way into the cutter that it's a lot smoother than when I feed it the other way, you know. This is the side where I fed it that way. This is the side where I was feeding that way. So when I roll this thing over, and of course this is where the sides of the cutter lapped over, both cuts lapped over, I'm gonna feed the thing into the cutter this way all the time for every cut and see if it doesn't make a better cut. And I've been kind of playing with the speeds and feeds too, so we'll see what happens. But so far that looks like a really nice piece of aluminum, and it's not full of bubbles. I'm still just trying to get through the surface pits with this thing, but you can see This is the cut I made with that facing cutter, and there on the top, I get it to focus, there's with the fly cutter, and it's just a whole lot smoother. So possibly I know how to use the fly cutter better than I do the facing mill. So I think I'll finish the squaring off and getting through the surface pits with this fly cutter. We'll see. Okay, I've cut this thing 6 ways from Sunday, and I need to smooth down some of the surfaces that I did that facing mill. The fly cutter seems to do a much better job. And it's not square, so I'm going to go watch a video about how to square up a cube in the mill. He'll come back and work on this tomorrow. As Mr. Pete would say, it's another day, and I watched the Tom's Technique video on squaring up a piece in the mill, and I used Tom's Technique, and this is pretty well square. I was wrong about there not being any bubbles. Some of the surfaces are pretty well free of bubbles, and the others have got some bubbles. This one's got quite a lot. It might be if I got deeper in, well, I would find better metal, but nevertheless it's strong enough, and it's square enough and good enough to move on to the next part of the project. And next time I cast something, I'll get some of that professional degassing stuff they sell in the big old pills, and maybe it'll come out without any bubbles at all. There's a whole lot less bubbles here than the last time I cast anything. So now to set it up and start making something out of it. Just look at that brother eating metal. Everything's in there. Finally got around to buying a roughing end mill. Should have been on the way back there. That thing can eat some metal and no strain at all. Okay, so I've taken this little piece here, and let me see if I can zoom back out so I can get focused. And I machined it in this particular shape, and I'm going to set it up on some little blocks and drill some holes in it. I'm going to give up on saying whether it's got any bubbles or not, because there's certainly no bubbles in that. The deeper I cut, the prettier the metal is. So we're going to assume that this was a really successful piece of aluminum, and all the little imperfections are out near the surface. Okay, the holes are done, and so they go all the way through. There'll be a lot more holes in that, but now I got to do a little something on the lathe, which is kind of nervous. I didn't get my regular glasses yet, so I've got these drugstore things. We'll see if I can crash anything. Alright, looks like a 41-degree cut on here. let's see if that'll fit into a drilled hole. All right, we'll drill 3/8 hole. And then we're going to chamfer it. A really deep one. Oh, come on. And then we'll see if that bolt fits. It doesn't look pretty, but maybe it's going. Okay, so to make things fit, I drilled a 29/64 hole, and as we can see, that sinks down in there pretty good. This other one needs to be countersunk just a little bit deeper, and then I'll have two of these little guys. I'll cut them off about there, and we'll show you what they're for.
At least this job won't last long enough for the motor to get hot. 4 little cuts like that shouldn't take too long. And we'll put a little bit of it together. Just see what it looks like. We'll move on here in just a second.
Okay, this is where I'm going to mount the thing to bore a hole in it. Down on there. Just like that. And I'll hold the thing down with a couple of wing nuts. Like that. But I've also got to make a boring bar and stuff like that to actually bore the thing out. So that'll be the end of this particular part of the thing, and we'll take on up the thing in part 2. Appreciate you viewing, and please subscribe and hit the like button if you didn't really hate it too much. Okay, bye everybody.